Hey Lisa, can you hear us?
We can hear you.
All right. I'm on my way, so I'll be there by 10, 15 minutes.
All right, are we ready to go? Okay. Do you want me to come over? Then will they be able to hear us? We'll find out. Can you still hear us online?
I can hear
I
you.
can hear
Yes.
you.
Okay. So it is 6:16 on Tuesday, August 26th, and we will call this Finance Committee meeting to order. First order of business is to call the roll. I think everyone is here, so that pretty much covers that. And we do have a quorum, and I can certify we are in compliance with open meetings law. Public comment. Do we have any public comment? All right. Next item is communications and presentations, and we have the investment review. Come on up and hit the red button.
Okay, you guys can hear me all right? Great. Did you want to say anything before I prattle on about Treasury securities?
The only thing I was going to mention is per the policy, there's a quarterly annual review. Both Shannon at the utilities and I met and asked Tammy to conduct an outside review of our investments. So she'll be presenting at the utilities committee as well.
Great, thank you so much. And for those of you who don't know me, you've seen other individuals from Ellers. We actually are your public finance professionals who help with debt issuance management. We also help with cash and investment management. So this is really just an expansion of those services. My name is Tammy Oshevsky. Tammy O is sufficient. As Lisa had mentioned, my background is investments and compliance. So really what we do is we come in, we provide an outside perspective, perhaps take a look at what you have been doing in the past and make some suggestions on ways to optimize your earnings potential, especially as we have seen these interest rates shift in the last 6 to 12 months. So I won't go through page by page of the presentation. You all have a fiduciary responsibility that you owe your constituents to ensure you know where your money is, how it's performing, and if there's anything else that you should be doing with it. So really that's the goal of today. I did include a few pieces of information as far as a market update or economic. I don't want to call it a forecast. I don't like to predict where I think things may go. I often say rates may change. That's a really generic way of saying that we are in a little bit of uncertainty right now. With the new administration, there are some hesitancies around locking in yield or providing too long of a maturity schedule on investment portfolios for municipalities like yourselves. But to give you an idea, the last 12 months, we have seen interest rates on treasuries drop about 1% across the entire yield curve. So if we take a peek here at that, the first couple pages, like I said, I wanted you to have an idea of who I am and who we are. There are some people in there that it's never just me. So just so you know, I am the investment portfolio manager on the account, but we have other individuals. So if Lisa ever needs anything, it's never just me. But really, we'll take ahead, if you want to jump ahead to page 3. That's really just the yield curve that I'm referencing. Oh, sorry. On the actual, yeah, keep going. On the actual presentation, I should have explained that. I put those first few slides in there just for your benefit, so you have a visual picture of me you can take with you, put it in your pocket. But really, these yield curves, this is what we are seeing in the market. So this is the type of detail. If you're out in the wild and somebody says, hey, what is the city doing with their money? Are they being smart about it? Do you know what's going on? You can say, yep, we check in on this. We see what's going on. You can see that those lines on the far right kind of represent what happened a year ago, which is the green line. What's going on right now, which is the blue line, nearly covered up by the orange line from about a month ago. All of that to say, we did see a pretty dramatic shift on the front end or short-term yields, but we are seeing a little bit of movement across the board. Month over month, not too exciting. Now, the reason I put this in here, the city right now, and we'll get into this in a moment, is heavily weighted in cash or cash-like instruments. That's not necessarily a bad thing when you're in a rising interest rate environment. That means you can take advantage of that interest rate increase as it goes up along the timeline. Now that we are potentially in a declining market or we are seeing rates come down, it's not always the best position to be in. So we have some thoughts on that, but just wanted you to see this yield curve so you know what I'm referencing if I bring it up again. This oftentimes when we were thinking about treasury rates or cash rates, those are often on the short end influenced by the federal funds rate. So you as investors are very limited in what you can invest in based upon state statute as well as your own policies. Oftentimes you'll hear me reference CDs or treasury bills, money market products, LGIP, which is a local government pooled product. It's a cash type instrument. The 3-month treasury and the LGIP very closely follow this, this federal funds rate. So you've probably heard in the news that there's a lot of commotion about surrounding the federal funds rate. It does drive or impact other interest rates, so it could impact what you feel when you are borrowing for cars or for mortgages. It's not a direct link, but in theory, it has a lot of impact downstream. The federal funds rate is really what banks lend to each other. That's the rate they pay for each other. So that rate right now has held pretty steady. However, we are anticipating a rate cut in September. All of that to say, that will impact very heavily the front end of the yield curve more so than the long term, that 3, 5, 7, 10-year rates. So if we jump ahead actually to, it'll be that actual, that we'll start with that portfolio overview. I should have brought a clicker. There we go. So as I mentioned, you are very limited in the investments that you are able to invest in. A lot of this is because it's taxpayer money. So it's not your money. It is money that your constituents have provided to the city. You have a duty to manage it in a prudent manner. You want to keep it safe, so preservation of principal is paramount. You want to have funds that are liquid or sufficiently liquid to cover bills, payroll, expenditures, planned projects, and of course, yield is the very last component, but we still want you to have that market rate of return. Very few municipalities take advantage of the opportunity to actually invest their cash flow. Cash, long-term funds, project funds, those all can be invested until you need them. And the reason I say this, you are very limited from a levy limit standpoint. You're not getting handed a lot of extra money. This is one of the few ways that you can be strategic and add a little bit of extra revenue to your bottom line. So that is really why I'm here today, is to just go through what you've been doing and maybe what we think you could be doing. So if we take a peek at this current portfolio, now 2 things I'm going to point out for you. Really, if you look at the right, that's that cash and cash equivalents. You can see that the portfolio is very heavily weighted in cash. Again, nothing wrong with that. It's safe, it's secure. You have options. But you can optimize those earnings by leveraging a few strategies that we might be able to provide. When we think about yield or rate of return, right now the average yield to maturity across those cash holdings is about 4.2, 4.25%. That's right on par with what we're seeing in the market. So cash or cash-like instruments are just over 4.25% right now. So there's nothing surprising there. When we look at the estimated annual income, so really one of the things I want to touch on here, there's a broad range there. Because if you sit in cash and if rates stay the same, you'll see $900 to $1 million in interest income just sitting in cash. If rates decline, you will see a pay cut. That's really where the city can hedge that or protect themselves against seeing that rate decline in their actual portfolio. So if rates come down, and actually I went between 3 and 4% is really, I went down to 3%, just worst case scenario if we see a couple of rate cuts over the next 6 to 12 months. you'll see around $630,000 of income. Again, this is just income. It's in a safe, liquid portfolio, so there's absolutely nothing wrong with what you are doing. This is just so that you can see if you sit in cash, you'll still have income. It's just not predictable. It's very unpredictable when you have variable cash products. If we take a peek at the next page, this just showcases for you what that maturity schedule looks like. It looks very boring, right? So you have a couple of CDs in there, that's about it, and then some cash. When we get further ahead, you'll see what this looks like if we actually provide a maturity ladder, they call it, where we spread your maturities over the next few years. And really, just taking a peek here. So, Lisa, if you want to go to the Ellers approach, I put this slide in here just so that you know I'm not just picking random things out of the air. It really comes down to a whole process. So I've met with Lisa and Shannon a couple of times. Lisa actually and I had worked together for many years, so she knows me personally as well. But part of this really focuses on your policies, how we might be able to enhance those, ensure that you're up to standards with best practices as well as statutes, but also not limiting yourselves too much. So we don't want your policies to become overburdensome, but we also want you to be protected and keep your funds safe. So we really started to look at how we could leverage what you have in place and what we would recommend for changing, while also implementing some strategy that you all could be very comfortable and confident with. Now, from a compliance standpoint, obviously we want to make sure that you are compliant with state statutes as well as your own policies. So a lot of what we will be looking at is what you have in place, which is very easy for me to say you're compliant with state statutes. But even moving forward, we will provide you some tools and mechanisms so that you have resources to know you are compliant. These are all real-time reports that are available to you, but also as you go through this process, there are some things that your finance team will be monitoring as they go through this. And really from a proposed portfolio standpoint, I'm not recommending anything too dramatic. However, I would recommend locking in yield before it drops too dramatically over the next 6 to 12 months. So as I mentioned, we have some uncertainty with how many rate cuts or how frequent or how, the size of these rate cuts. If we think back to 2019, to give you an example, those short-term rates were about 2.5%, and in 2020, they went to 0. So that's a pretty dramatic shift. Municipalities were budgeting in July and August for that 2.5%, and then in 2020, they had next to 0 for income on their investments. Again, cash, it was safe. They just didn't have the income component to bank on. Now, from a budgeting standpoint, that is where this portfolio or building some strategy around fixed income would serve you well. So it would provide the city that predictability of income. I'm not saying that you're going to have loads more income. That's not the goal. The goal is really to lock in some yield and provide some predictability. So these longer term municipal portfolios, not about taking on too much risk or shooting for the stars. It's all about keeping things pretty level, pretty even keel, protecting those funds, making sure they're liquid when you need them, but that predictability of income is ultimately the goal. And if we take a look at that next portfolio, you'll see here that I built in a little bit of diversification in investment vehicles. This provides you some stability not only in market value, so these underlying holdings will fluctuate in value during the holding period, but if the city needed to liquidate something, you have a variety of options to choose from. Now again, this portfolio is not designed to necessarily provide you a crazy amount of income more than what you're doing right now. It's about hedging against this decline in the interest rate market. So we are expecting those rates to come down in the next few months. This portfolio was really built upon 3.8 to about 4.2% from an interest rate standpoint. We are still seeing some opportunities outside of those ranges. So there are certain investment vehicles that are still paying a little bit more than that. But I don't think it's important at this point to overpromise for you. It's important for you to focus more on the long range longevity of the portfolio and building that predictability of income. And if you take a look at that next page, you'll see here the difference from that first maturity schedule to the proposed. This builds a few maturities in here throughout the next few years so that you have liquidity if you need it. So let's just say interest rates suddenly start to go up again. You'll have maturities that you can take advantage of that rise in interest rates as they occur. And if we take a peek here, so I do want to ask, does anyone have questions? A lot of this is, I don't want to say hypothetical, but what you are doing right now, you have a very liquid portfolio. Again, it's safe. There's nothing wrong with that. It's really just about our recommendation being build some strategy in there. And of course, I won't make any guesstimates on what interest rates will look like in the next 6 months, but I suspect they will come down.
Questions?
And of course, if questions come up, don't be afraid to send them to Lisa. I'm happy to help.
Speculative question. Because the federal government has decided to foray themselves into crypto investments, is there anything, I mean, I know that we're limited by what the legislature tells us here in state that we can do. Do they have any inkling as to opening that market up? Not that I'm advocating or saying anything for it, but is that a possibility?
I would say anything is a possibility for no reason other than as they begin to regulate that market, we may see other types of cryptocurrency come out. Perhaps safer or more liquid options. Right now, no, but that doesn't mean that in the future they won't have something, and you're not the only one asking.
I just wonder if they have, because I know that there are ETFs and stuff like that that you can get into, that buy into that, so that sort of doesn't really separate you from the risk of it, but
Right.
a little bit anyway.
And there are some allowances, I would say, from a municipal government standpoint. If you wanted to explore how you could invest in those types of markets, it isn't necessarily appropriate right now, but be mindful as those things change, that is something that we can discuss.
All right, the next item is the minutes from the last meeting, 8/12. Did anyone have any questions or, excuse me, changes? And if none, I'll open the floor for a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve minutes?
All right, moved by Brett, seconded by Adrian. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? And one abstention by Ozzy. Excuse me, sorry. Reports.
Not too much new to report on. The only thing that I'm going to mention is True Hilton is now behind on the fourth quarter 2024, first and second quarter of 2025. And we still haven't seen anything, so they shouldn't be operating, selling alcohol because they don't have a license. Otherwise, typical notes as usual.
For those who have a little bit more history, have they ever fallen quite this far behind? Is there anything what else can happen?
I mean, we incur penalties on them but that's about the limit.
Can you go over the penalties that we're charging them again, please?
I would have to look them up. I haven't handled the room tax. I don't know, Mayor, if you know. I think there's like a one-time and then.
Yeah, I think it's a flat fee amount, and eventually we collect it one way or another, but, you know, it's a little bit frustrating because it's not really their money to begin with. It's on top of what somebody pays for the room. You probably know that. You've rented, you know, but when money gets tight, people do things to cash flow that they wouldn't normally do.
I did notice that we sent them a check for like $3,900. I'm assuming that's for.
I would have to check on that one. And I can also talk with the city attorney to see what maybe our options are for collection as well.
They're not gonna pay me, we shouldn't pay you that.
Lisa?
And is it safe to assume that they are given a notice, they're aware that they are not to be, that they don't have a liquor license and they need to be in compliance with not serving alcohol, or?
Yes, the clerk's been in contact with them on that.
And I did have an unrelated question whenever you're ready, just about one of the reports. You good? Okay. Is on the budget amendment detail report, there's several of the first items on the first page, are those related to the riverfront? Like 2.2 million, 1.2? Those are pretty significant, and I'm just wondering if that's,
So we removed them from the CIP this year. So that was part of the resolution that was approved when we did the budget amendments to make changes to what we were actually going to issue debt for. So we did have some increases, some decreases, some projects that were going away.
and is that the riverfront?
Correct.
Okay, I kind of thought so. And then one that was just a little puzzling to me, is the Tremel. I know that changed, but there's so many line items I was just curious about.
Yeah, so that was the one, the Public Works was
Right.
able to purchase a used one through the auction instead of using
Right.
CIP money for next year. So they got it basically for about half of what it would have cost for a new one. And I think there were several funding sources. Some of them were operations. Some of them might have been leftover CIP.
Yeah, so the transfer of funds came from the operating budget. They ended up not having to use as much, but before, when we were looking at this, it was originally the full amount that they used to lease. And then some street projects that came in under were transferred to the 410 capital.
I can't find it in front of me because I think I saw it. If I find it, I'll just send you a message. Oh, yeah, it's like on page 1 and 2, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 10 different line items for the Tremel screen, and so there's so many of them. I remember we were going to purchase it otherwise. Is that for the rentals then?
That is for the purchase. So at first, when they came and wanted $75,000 to bid up to, $16,500 came from the general fund, so that's that first entry. Then there were some street projects, which is in the Fund 400. There were multiple of them between 2023 and 2024 projects that they were going to use and have a combination of that to come up with the $75,000.
Oh, okay. I remember talking about that, but it confused me when it was all under the Tremel screen. But
It's all related. It's just
Yeah.
coming from different funds
Gotcha.
and with accounting, the debits and credits.
thank you.
Hopefully it all adds up to what we paid for it.
I trust you.
I was trying to do it in my head, I gave up. Any other questions?
Yeah, that was the only one that I was gonna ask, was about with all the line items in there, but.
All right. Then I believe the last item that we have, sorry, I mowed my lawn and it's all up in my throat now, is a resolution to approve an agreement to undertake development. This, I believe, is, this is to amend it, if I understood correctly, amend timing.
Yep, so part of it is setting up the developer's agreement, establishing the amount of tax increment that needs to be generated, and then also moving the date for closing.
All right. Was there anybody who was going to speak to this at all, or did anybody have questions about it? We talked about this a while ago, as I recall. And then, based on my reading, it looks like we accepted the offer on July 8th, and there's no dollar figure associated with it. From what I could see, we were looking to amend the offer to reflect closing date in mid-November. Anything else?
No, I
Partner?
think that's pretty much it. And so we had a letter of credit, and I think we're basically, I don't know what the term would be, dissolving that and issuing a new one. You know, so we're carrying over the remaining balance, if there is any, and then we have a new letter of credit that would be required for this lot that we're selling.
So last meeting was the letter of credit for the current development, and that's going to council tonight to that they've met the terms of the agreement, which included current and future increment. With this developer's agreement, it is only going to consider actual increment up to $225,000. The calculation was the same as the last one, which is based off a capital infrastructure that was put in based on the acreage.
And, you know, having driven out there, it looks like the other two buildings are well under construction for the first phase. And then I don't know what your timeline is for starting the two new buildings.
Well, where I'm at right now, the buildings we have now, the 7th, I have 8 buildings on the first week. The 8th building, they're getting ready to right now. All the subs, they're just getting them the inside. 8th building, they put the roof on today. So we'll probably have 7th one of October, the one at the end of September. As soon as we're done with all of this, it's approved, then I will take property that I have and I don't know how Kathy works it, but sell a property and take that money to another property.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Capital gains?
Tax exchange.
Yeah, capital
So
gains,
at that
yeah.
point, I will sell another property I have. And also at that time, I will get the bank for approved with this, get a loan for that other building, will be around 1.5 I need for those two buildings over there. For me to put up, not counting things I have to put in, which is for $500,000. And that'll be, that property will be probably $2 million or more than $2 million as far as what you're talking.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And the city attorney is right behind you and he's listening very closely.
It's hard to tell because now I have to sell that property. That's not a magic number. I have to sell it now. Alone, build the other building. I would like to, it's going to be before it's frozen because I want to start that building of yours. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I want to start that next building before it's frozen. I don't know. We may end up closing in December. I don't get to start it till March.
Sure.
It's the weather and it's the realtors. Can't just make it happen.
Sure.
So that's how my whole job's been, my whole life. I've been building and selling things for 45 years, so you never know what happens. That's where we're at.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to recommend to council.
So moved.
All right, motion by Lisa,
Second.
second by Brett. Any final questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? All right, we will recommend to council, and that'll come next meeting, correct? Or is it on this one? Okay. All right, I think that takes us to the end of our agenda. Future agenda items are the budget presentation on the 14th. And I think there's supposed to be pyrotechnics in that presentation, if I recall correctly.
Those weren't in the budget.
And then conversation around the depot sale, affordable housing fund use options, TID 4, and referendum, as always. Anything we need to add? Any motions?
Move to adjourn.
All right, Lisa has moved to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Adrian. All in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? All right, we're adjourned.